Yes, you guys heard me correctly. The numbers are in. And just like I told you, there was a boycott.
You got to understand, these numbers, they did like 2 million viewers. That's up from 2023. 2023 was a little over 900,000. So it is up. So the numbers are going up. But compared to last year, it fell by 40%.
Oh, so they're going to try to spin it. Okay, it could be the second most watched of all time. Of course, it's going to be that, but compared to last year, you still down 36%.
But like, it is another situation than pretending like Caitlin Clark doesn't exist.
They want to make the trajectory look like it's going up and not down. It's whatever, man. We see what's going on.
They're trying to make it so that the data looks as favorable as possible.
ESPN didn't want to show the ratings were down from WNBA All-Star Game because Caitlin Clark didn't play, so they just used the 2023 numbers instead.
ESPN was recently shown to have manipulated WNBA All-Star Game ratings in order to conceal the disastrous effects of Caitlin Clark's absence. Even their own journalists are publicly criticizing them for deceiving the public due to the devastating proof. Ratings for the 2025 All-Star Game in Indianapolis plummeted by 36%, from 3.4 million viewers to just 2.2 million. ESPN chose to compare against 2023 rather than last year's numbers in order to fabricate a story about historical growth that never happened. The fact that the game took place in Clark's home stadium in Indianapolis only serves to highlight how ridiculous this deception is. In other words, this should have been the greatest celebration in WNBA history, but instead it turned into a catastrophe that ESPN desperately attempted to portray as a victory by manipulating statistics.
Skewing data. They're just skewing data.
So it's up 158% compared to 23. What happened to 24? Y'all just gonna skip over 24? Like,
Thing is, this could be disingenuous too. That's the bad side of it, because for some reason they have a thing where they want to compare everything without Caitlin. They're like, oh, well, she's an anomaly, so we could compare these numbers to 2023 and show you that without Caitlin, it's growing.
This is very similar to the WNBA draft, comparing it to 2023. Very similar to how they are presenting this.
Clark's recurrent groin injury during the Fever's victory over Connecticut on July 15th was the injury that sparked the entire affair. Additionally, ticket prices fell 48% from $121 to just $64 within hours of her announcing she couldn't attend All-Star Weekend, demonstrating that casual fans were genuinely refusing to attend a WNBA showcase without their biggest star. This wasn't merely a small blow to the league. A total economic collapse revealed just how reliant the WNBA has become on a single 23-year-old player who has already missed 10 games this season due to various injuries, making this her most injury-plagued campaign to date. During her rookie season and college career, she never missed a single game. Whether you believe that ESPN's manipulation demonstrates their knowledge that Caitlin Clark is the sole factor propelling the WNBA's growth, please leave a comment below and let me know whether you think major sports networks can be relied upon when they have financial interests in the leagues they cover.
for all the people that thought that it wasn't a boycott against this All-Star game, it was, bro. People was just DMing me, telling me that they wasn't going to look at it. People was telling me that they refunded their tickets. I was even supposed to be there, and I decided not to go because of the things with the referees and the WNBA disrespecting Caitlin.
1,250,000 viewers, woof, out of existence. No Caitlin Clark, not tuning in.
So all of you guys can sit there and say, oh, you guys are just trying to uplift one player. Oh, the league is more than one. I agree, the league is more than one player. It's more than one good basketball player. But is there more than one player that moves the tide? No. We just have to be honest. It's okay.
There is fans that are just Caitlin Clark fans. I said this yesterday. If Caitlin Clark was to lead to go to New York or any other damn team, expect significant impact in the Indiana Fever viewership, bro. People might tune in for that first season without Caitlin if she was to leave, but after that, it is over with.
There was plenty of people I saw online who said, yo, Caitlin Clark not playing. Oh, she's hurt and they don't want to call fouls. Okay, I'm not giving them a view. I'm not going to watch. There was plenty of people that boycotted watching this WNBA All-Star game.
You can see when Caitlin doesn't play, it happens. And how are we meant to know that if Caitlin ends up missing a year, Caitlin's gone, that all those fans don't just leave again?
They know they need Caitlin Clark to grow this.
When you look closely at how ESPN created their false historical viewing narrative, cherry-picking data points that presented the best possible picture while utterly ignoring the significant loss that actually occurred, it becomes even more clear how statistically dishonest they were. ESPN's official social media accounts and press releases highlighted that the 2025 game was up 158% from 2023, when Clark was still playing college basketball and the WNBA was virtually unknown to mainstream audiences, rather than truthfully stating that All-Star viewership decreased by more than 1 million people in comparison to 2024. This was neither an oversight nor an accident. The choice to conceal the reality of what transpires when their main attraction is unavailable and use the most positive analogy possible to sway public opinion was well thought out. When you consider that they had portrayed Clark as the driving force behind the league's record development for the entire season, then abruptly acted as though individual players are unimportant after her absence resulted in a ratings catastrophe, the deceit becomes even more obvious. The skills challenge and three-point contest figures on Friday night, which attracted 1.3 million people and marked an 89% increase from the previous year, were also prominently pushed by the network. However, they purposely overlooked important background information that would have clarified that this bump had nothing to do with the league's general health and was entirely related to schedule and format changes, which usually increase viewing anyhow.
Just not put up 153, just say 2.2 million average viewers, and then just say second most watched All-Star game ever behind 2024, which is fine. You don't even have to say how down bad it is. It's a PR page.
Instead of trying to down Caitlin Clark and diminish her to the level that other people may be at, why don't you promote the other people alongside of Caitlin Clark's greatness?
If Caitlin Clark was in it, we're going to say it's up on non-Caitlin Clark numbers because, you know, Caitlin Clark's just an anomaly. Caitlin Clark's not a player. Caitlin Clark is not relevant to this. Caitlin Clark is an anomaly.
Y'all are trying to straddle the fence. We want your money, but we don't want you. Which one is it? Which one is it? We want the viewership, but we only want viewership from certain people's fans. We want the ratings up, but we don't want these type of like, no, do you want it or not? You got to accept what comes with everything. The good, the bad,
Every element of the WNBA's economic environment was devastated by Clark's departure, which went far beyond television ratings. ESPN's broadcast made a valiant effort to conceal the whole market collapse that resulted from ticket sales, product revenue, and corporate sponsorship value. The 48% decrease in ticket prices from $121 to $64 wasn't merely a small shift in the market. Customers who had bought tickets especially to watch Clark compete in her hometown of Indianapolis completely rejected the goods. And the fact that this collapse occurred just hours after her injury was announced shows that, in the absence of their main draw, casual viewers have little interest in WNBA basketball. Fans flooded social media with announcements that they were selling tickets, canceling travel plans, and just not going to the All-Star game because Clark would not be playing. This was the exact type of fan boycott that ESPN's falsified statistics were intended to conceal from corporate sponsors and potential advertisers.
Now, many other people stated that, you know what, it was sold out. It was not a boycott. Well, you know the old saying, men lie, women lie, and the numbers don't. This is a case of the numbers not lying.
I believe that it's everything also leading up to this. I mean, talk about leading up to this. The officiating, I think enough fans had it up to here with the league as a whole. People had it up to here. You got to understand. Caitlin Clark is getting beat up in these games. The refs aren't calling anything. Kathy Engelbert seems to have air between both of her ears. She seems to have pure air floating between her ears. And I think people are fed up.
And what led up to this whole situation is the WNBA referees not giving Caitlin Clark a fair whistle. The whistle played into facts when it comes to this WNBA All-Star game. I don't give a damn how people try to spin it, cut it. You cannot cut the facts. And the facts is the WNBA All-Star game was a disaster before it even started.
Kathy Engelbert, this should be a perfect example of why you need to get your officiating cleaned up and you need to have a talk with your players in the league. And nobody's asking you to hold Caitlin Clark's hand. Just play fair and stop with the WWE bull.
Every company in Indianapolis that had been depending on Clark-driven tourism revenue, from lodging facilities and dining businesses to retail stores that had loaded up on Fever products especially for the weekend, was impacted by the economic fallout, which went beyond the All-Star game itself. And ESPN's coverage solely focused on carefully chosen numbers that made the situation seem less dire than it actually was, utterly ignoring this wider economic catastrophe. More detrimental to the league's long-term prospects was the way Clark's absence revealed the other WNBA stars' total lack of appeal. Players like Nafisa Collier, who set a record with 36 points and was named an All-Star MVP, were unable to attract even a small portion of the attention that Clark does just by being there, demonstrating that the league's star-making apparatus has failed miserably to produce another player who can engage a mainstream audience. Reputable journalists like Christine Brennan publicly questioned why ESPN's PR department persists in misleading fans rather than truthfully reporting on WNBA viewership trends and the evident influence of individual star players on audience engagement. The industry's reaction to ESPN's statistical manipulation was swift and severe. Brennan's direct tweet criticizing ESPN for promoting historic viewership when the actual numbers showed a sharp decline from the previous year went viral, drawing much more attention to the network's dishonest tactics than it otherwise would have. Controversy surrounding WNBA coverage. Reporter Austin Karp of the Sports Business Journal added even more harmful background by describing the two ways in which the Caitlin Clark effect appears. Anything that has Clark receives huge numbers, and anything that doesn't get Clark suffers greatly. Pointing to the 36% all-star dip and comparable declines in other events when she is not present, forming a complete picture of league reliance that ESPN's skewed coverage was intended to hide. You've gone beyond corporate messaging into open dishonesty when your own industry peers publicly criticize your statistical integrity and raise doubts about your journalistic standards. Furthermore, it shows how obvious and problematic ESPN's manipulation was that several independent sports media professionals felt obliged to fact-check the network's official coverage. The WNBA functions in two entirely different eras before and after Clark, with radically different audience expectations and business realities that render direct comparisons pointless unless you're attempting to conceal current issues. This is what makes ESPN's comparison to 2023 even more illuminating. ESPN was subtly admitting that the Clark era represents a significant shift in WNBA popularity that regular year-over-year analysis doesn't apply by using 2023 as their baseline rather than 2024. This poses a serious challenge to their narrative about sustainable league growth independent of any one player. The 2024 explosion appears even more reliant on individual star power than ESPN wants to acknowledge to prospective advertisers and corporate partners because the pre-Clark era, when ESPN used it for comparison, featured all-star games that frequently drew fewer than 1 million viewers and regular season games that frequently couldn't crack 500,000. Additionally, ESPN's earlier coverage of the season, in which they continuously attributed record-breaking attendance and viewing numbers to Clark, is undermined by this statistical manipulation. Because their entire story about Clark's influence becomes confusing and untrustworthy if individual players aren't significant enough to merit candid year-over-year comparisons. Because WNBA players are now engaged in important wage talks where television viewership figures directly affect their leverage in seeking higher compensation from league ownership, the CBA connection makes ESPN's ratings manipulation even more worrisome. Players' All-Star Weekend warm-ups featured Pay Us What You Owe Us shirts, which were created expressly to draw attention to the disparity between the league's rising popularity and stagnating player compensation. However, ESPN's use of statistical methods to conceal the 36% drop in ratings actually weakens the players' negotiating position by giving the wrong ideas about audience, sustainability, and revenue. Participation. Stars like Clark and Kalia have cited record-breaking viewership as evidence that the league's worth has grown beyond present salary structures, and players have been utilizing ratings growth as their main argument for why they should receive much more compensation. However, When you take Clark out of the picture, ESPN's skewed coverage prevents us from having frank discussions about what that growth truly looks like. ESPN's financial relationship with the WNBA implies that their coverage directly influences business choices worth millions of dollars, which makes the timing of their misinformation during ongoing CBA negotiations even more unethical. Additionally, corporate sponsors are being misinformed about real audience trends and the instability associated with Clark reliance, as they depend on precise viewership figures to assess their investments. Beyond WNBA coverage alone, the wider ramifications of ESPN's statistical tampering highlight serious issues with the way corporate media manages sports businesses, in which they have financial interests, putting story preservation ahead of journalistic integrity in ways that don't ultimately benefit anyone's long-term interests. Networks' compulsion to fabricate basic viewership figures during what ought to be joyous occasions betrays serious concerns about the league's viability and growth paths that would be revealed by truthful reporting, fostering an atmosphere in which corporate messaging is passed off as objective journalism and viewers lose faith in the information they are getting from purportedly reliable sources. It appears that ESPN is more concerned with preserving lucrative broadcasting partnerships than offering accurate sports coverage, as evidenced by their decision to forego credibility in favor of short-term narrative protection. This harms ESPN's reputation as a news organization over time and makes viewers more dubious of their coverage of any sport or league with which they have business ties. Social media users quickly identified and pointed out the statistical ploys used to obscure Clark's impact, indicating that viewers are growing increasingly aware of media manipulation and less inclined to believe corporate spin as factual reporting. The fan reaction to ESPN's manipulation has been overwhelmingly negative.